Hello everyone, my name is Ashton Fritz, and today I'll be presenting Captain America vs. Iron Man, Louis Althusser's theory of ideology in American politics. People like to think of issues and problems in terms of black and white. However, problems are more often complex and fall into the gray area. When people are faced with complex problems, they turn to their ideologies and beliefs to find the best possible solution, which leads to my research question. How can Louis Althusser's theory and ideologies be applied to superhero comics, and what does that application reveal about American society? To answer my research question, first I'll provide some background with an in-depth look at Althusser's theory. Next, I'm going to take you through some context about ideologies and movements. After that, I'm going to apply Althusser's theory to the 2016 Marvel film Captain America: Civil War. Finally, I'll go through my analysis and conclusions followed by my works cited. French philosopher Louis Althusser defined ideology as the representation of imaginary relationship of individuals to their real conditions of existence. In his theory, he states that ideologies have a material existence through organizations such as churches, education, laws, and the media. The existence is called the ideological state apparatus, or ISIS for short. According to Althusser, these ISIS and ideology can be manipulated and used as a form of controlling people. Ideologies, as they spread from person to person, develop into social, political, religious, and other types of movements. Movements are groups of people with the same ideologies working to make a change to an issue they perceive as a problem. Movements have evolved over time. There are three main periods I'll be examining: the 1960s, the 1970s and 80s, and then post 9/11. The 1960s saw the birth and the beginning of social movements. The 60s were full of tensions and problems that people wanted to resolve, such as civil rights and the Vietnam War. However, the only real way to express one's ideologies and beliefs towards big issues was through massive demonstration. Sit-ins, marches, and massive protests were the main tools used to get their views across. In order to be properly organized and gain maximum profits for their efforts, people in movements realized that they needed to establish a central figure, one charismatic leader who became the face of a movement and controlled the actions and ideologies of the movement. According to Lin, successful movements had a charismatic leader with a substantial and consistent following, showing the importance and effectiveness of a charismatic leader in the mobilization process. The 1970s and 80s saw an explosion of new movements. For example, civil rights, anti-war and anti-violence movements, feminism, and even LGBT rights movements were all going on in this period. This is when the first evolution of movements began to happen. People realized that massive demonstrations were no longer enough to get their views heard. They needed to do more to get more actions produced. People then looked to their leaders of their movements and to get more results and think of better ways to help. Movement leaders realized that just protesting the issue would not be enough. They would need to find a way to work with the government in order to achieve these goals. However, it is very difficult for movements and the government to work together without compromising somewhere. In order to achieve the goals and fix the problems the movements had, they had to bend to the will of the government. This resulted in a changing of movement ideologies that came from the leaders having to work with the government. According to Stewart and Richardson, movements were deformed by pressures derived from trying to respond to government influences and expectations. The government is an ever-watchful state. It is an apparatus apparently bent on exercising control over unusual groups, not fitting to the pattern of common experience in U.S. society. 9/11. After the terrorist attacks of September 11th, many things changed, and it launched the modern-day form of ideological expression. Today, ideological expression is plagued with severe polarization on issues. Political, social, and religious, every problem has two main and unwavering sides, usually. After 9/11, new mediums for raising awareness and expressing ideology were created. These mediums were created through the media and popular culture. Blogs, movies, television shows, songs, and even comic books all became ways for movements to express their ideas. People also started turning away from real leaders and looking towards symbolic, fictional characters to be the face of their movements. According to Shulin Viles, comics are a composite text made up of words and images that taken together can have an impact far different from that produced by more traditional modes of narrative. Because the figures that make up comics rub up against reality in ways that words cannot reveal, revealing various assumptions, predispositions, and prejudice that another author illustrates may hold. Now, before I begin diving into the heart of Marvel's Civil War, I'm going to provide some background. In the previous film of the Avengers series, Marvel's Age of Ultron, Tony Stark creates Ultron, who is supposed to be a peacekeeping robot, but turned to the dark side and decided to wipe out humanity so it could evolve and be better. Ultron set up his hideout in the fictional village of Sokovia, and the Avengers went in to kick his butt, and despite evacuation attempts, a lot of innocent civilians got hurt or were killed. In Marvel's Civil War, the movie opens with Wanda Maximoff causing a horrible accident that kills several Wakandian aid workers. This causes the world leaders to get angry and demand that the Avengers have oversight. They come up with the Sokovian Accords. These accords place the Avengers under a United Nations committee that decides when, where, and how the Avengers can act. The heroes must sign the accords or be forced into retirement. The accords are a fictional representation of the U.S. Patriot Act. These issues, the issues of the accords that they debate are a reflection of a debate going on in American society today, the issue of freedom versus security, and it divides the Avengers into two teams. Team Captain America does not wish to sign the accords. Team Cap values freedom over security in a liberal-leaning argument. Captain says that the accords would take away the right to choose, so he refuses to sign. Team Iron Man does sign the accords, choosing security and oversight over the cost of freedom. Iron Man and his team have a more conservative stance and sign because it's the lawfully right thing to do. On Cap's team, we have Falcon, Winter Soldier, Scarlet Witch, Ant-Man, and Hawkeye. On Iron Man's team, we have War Machine, Black Panther, Black Widow, Vision, and Spider-Man. Now to apply the theory. The first way we can see the theory is in diction. Tony Stark and Steve Rogers represent two ideological camps, freedom and security. In this scene, seen by the picture, the Accords have just been proposed to the Avengers and they are discussing/arguing whether to sign. Almost all the Avengers have made an appearance in this scene, however the three lines that I chose are the most important to the scene. First is Vision, a member of Team Iron Man. He says, Our very strength invites challenge, and challenge incites conflict, and conflict breeds catastrophe. Oversight is not an idea that can be dismissed out of hand. With this quote, Vision is both explaining why the Accords are needed and offering to the viewers the mindset of some of the more minor characters. For most of the scenes, and throughout the movie, Tony Stark and Steve are really the only ones that have arguments and fights about these Accords, so Vision offers insight to the more minor characters on the team. Next, when asked, Tony gives his reasoning behind his ideological standpoint. He says, There is no decision-making process for me. We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game. Tony is the representation of the politically conservative argument. The people need to feel safe, and to do that they must be willing to give up a small portion of their freedom. The team needs to answer to someone and be held in check. Therefore, they must give up their right to choose in order to protect the greater good. Captain America responds by saying, Tony, if we sign that, we surrender our right to choose. Captain America represents the politically liberal argument. The government cannot take away the people's rights and freedoms. He argues that the team would not be able to protect the greater good because they will not be able to choose how and when they protect people. Next, we're going to see it in body positions. For this scene, Tony tries to bully and belittle Steve into signing the Accords. The picture to the right is a part in the scene and shows how Tony is seen belittling Steve. Tony is standing and is filling the whole camera, while Steve is seen from behind and sitting. Throughout this scene, Steve has no direct lighting on him, and he is seen mostly from behind. The emphasis is placed on Tony, given that there is a light source shining around him, and he is seen with the powerful body language of standing. According to Langley, Tony tries to bully Steve because when a person perceives one of their convictions to be threatened, it can cause them to endorse their views more extremely. And according to Hogan, superheroes help us better understand what traits we value and why we value them. Finally, we're going to talk about symbolism and color. In the movie, there's a major battle scene at an airport. This is when the team has all-out war, and they line up against each other to do battle. While this picture isn't from the scene, it does show the two teams lining up for each other and showing off the symbolism in their costumes. The colors of the costumes of both teams are symbolic, and they represent which side of the debate the two teams stand on. In Iron Man's case, the colors are symbolically conservative, red, golds, and silvers symbolizing power, opulence, and wealth, which tend to lean more conservatively, given that conservatives are into business and regulations. Captain America's team, on the other hand, represents liberal ideologies of freedom and rights. So they typically wear the colors of the flag, red, white, and blue, with an occasional silver. Even the minor characters from both teams wear one or more of the colors that represent their arguments. These colors are representative of ideological states because, according to Langley, neither side in the conflict needs to wave a banner because their leaders are living emblems. Fictional characters can inspire us in many ways, as their stories can call us to feel specific emotions that can motivate us. These superheroes are no longer just a drawing on a page. They are complex characters that show the audience how these types of debates or fights could play out. Superheroes are symbolic representations of uncompromising ideologies. Spoiler alert, there's no winner. Every side of the battle lost. The unwillingness to compromise in their beliefs was the tool of destruction for the entire team of Avengers. American society today mimics that unwillingness to compromise. There is extremely severe polarization on topics, and people will make decisions based solely on which side of the political line they fall on. If they are liberal, they will base their decisions for issues in liberal ideology, and if they are conservative, they will base their decisions on conservative ideology. No longer are people willing to talk things out and listen to the other side. There's a refusal to compromise. Finally, in conclusion, in order to keep the fate of Marvel's Civil War away, in order to stop the destruction that appears to be impending, American society needs to take a hard look at the ideological intransigence in the values that dividing debates in society. Thank you. Here are my conclusions and here are my works cited and images citations.